All right, we are back, and the seasons, they're changing here in the Northern Hemisphere with summer giving way to autumn, which means for many of us, it is time to dust off our full suits. And that's good timing because today we have two special guests on the pod, Buddy Pendergast and Mackenzie Warner of Patagonia Wetsuits. Buddy, Mackenzie, thanks so much for joining us on the lineup.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. This is great.
Yeah, we're excited. Looking forward to the conversation.
Right on. Now, Buddy, I think you've just returned from a repair tour on the East Coast of the U.S. Mackenzie, I'm not sure if you were out there, but you guys are both in Ventura today. Is that right?
Yeah. We have two different Patagonia campuses in Ventura. So I'm up at our Patagonia Brooks campus, and then
cool.
Buddy's down at the main campus.
Yeah. We're like satellite neighbors right now calling in.
Right on. Well, and I'd imagine you both spend a bit of time at what is called the Forge, which I had the pleasure of visiting not too long ago. And so maybe, Mackenzie, for the listeners out there, can you explain exactly what the Forge is, what you guys do there, and how that kind of relates to those other Patagonia operations?
Yeah, so up at Brooks campus, where I am, we have what is called the Forge, which is basically this giant building full of sewing machines and equipment that are essentially all of our factories have. And it's where we do a lot of our prototyping for different garments. We do a lot of material testing there, some like ideation, and it's just where it's a very special place at Patagonia. It's kind of where all the magic happens.
That's pretty cool. And I wanted to kind of get you to give a little bit of background there, because I think the exciting news that's coming out of this conversation is that you guys are in the process of launching a new line of Patagonia wetsuits with a significant amount of evolution from the previous lines. And the story behind that evolution is really interesting, and I think had to do with both the challenges and opportunities that came with you guys having to navigate the global pandemic of the last few years. Buddy, can you give us just a little bit of background on how, the conditions and the motivation for this new line kind of came to be?
Yeah, totally. I think also like just piggybacking, what Mackenzie was leading into with all the work that gets done at Brooks campus, we kind of modeled a lot of the R&D aspects of sort of our traditional garment forge, where we do all of our technical design and development, and piggybacked a lot of those things to build into what the wetsuit forge is, which is like down on main campus, which what you got to come and do a quick tour through. And that really has sort of been ground zero for everything we've been putting into this most recent design iteration of our ULEX suits. What's really interesting about that facility is it's kind of the intersection where our entire repair crew and all of the things that go into our repair initiatives behind our wetsuit program and R&D, design, development, prototype building, everything for the wetsuit in terms of the experimental exploratory phase, as well as all of the things happening for repair, happens under one roof, which is really cool and very unique, I think, for the surf community at large, in comparison to maybe how some other wetsuit manufacturers like exist in their practices and stuff. And it's something that, we're really proud of. And specifically for this wetsuit reiteration, it really kind of was the full culmination of all the years of experience we've gained since we started the wetsuit repair program over a decade ago, and sort of, really harness like pouring the gas on the fire, so to speak, for our design and development of our suits. So like once everybody came under that roof in the fall of 2020, it really sort of exponentially went off to the races in terms of all the things we were learning, all the things we were seeing, and all of the things that we really were excited to kind of like dive into and make changes for.
Right. And as you said, that's a pretty unique setup in the surfing world to have, hey, everyone that works on repairs, everyone that works on design, everyone works on this particular product is all in one roof. So you're getting kind of feedback in real time as to how the previous line of suits is performing, like what things can be improved upon, and then basically just turning around in your chair and having a real time conversation with the people that are going to produce the next line. Mackenzie, if you had to kind of outline a few things that you guys noticed in this process between the suits that you had out in the world and the ones that you then evolved to develop, which are being released now, what were the main things that you noticed that you guys made improvements on?
I think the two biggest things that we made improvements on were, one is the materials that we used to line the wetsuits, and then two is the actual construction of the wetsuit. So our previous iteration of the ULEX suit used all recycled polyester. And our new suits now, we switched to a solution dyed recycled nylon. So both are great materials for any outdoor garment. We decided to switch to the solution dyed recycled nylon because nylon just has a nicer hand feel to it. It's a bit softer and it's stretchier. So now the entire exterior of our wetsuits are solution dyed recycled nylon blended with spandex, and then the interior arms and lower legs are 100% nylon. So having nylon in those strategic areas allows for, again, just like more next to skin comfort, but also the fact that the nylons at the entry points of the lower legs and arms allows you to kind of slide into your suit a little easier. And also having the nylon in the arms is allowing it to be a bit more flexible. And then as far as the thermal lining, which would be on the core of the wetsuit, the interior thermal lining, we switched from the waffle grid, which was in our old wetsuits, to this new 3D camo knit that was inspired by Jerry Lopez. We call it the Jerry camo. And so that's like just a cool new pattern and aesthetic, but it also allowed the suit to become a little lighter just because of the knit construction is a little bit more varied than the waffle knit used to be. So I think the material update is like a huge plus. And then also the construction of the suit. So product development. So Andrew and then our designer Garrett worked really hard to redesign the actual wetsuit and the seam placements and thought about, like what the repair team saw in repairs and like what were the problem spots of the old suits, and moved around some seams to create less tension, and then just improve the overall fit of the suits. And then another big thing is we removed the power seam on the new suit. So that exterior, like liquid looking lining that went over all the seams, we removed that. It would always peel off, pretty soon after use in a wetsuit. So I think those are the biggest improvements, but I think just the overall comfort, warmth, I think there's just been a lot of work done to improve that.
Right. And you mentioned, the Jerry Lopez camo, and I was going to bring that up too, because Patagonia, as you pointed out, it kind of does things its own way, and its group of ambassadors, whether it's Jerry or Dan Ross or Dave Rostovich or Greg Long or Ramon Navarro, or a number of these kind of high profile but uniquely positioned surf ambassadors that are on the program. Buddy, how much interaction do they have in the product development when it comes to like a wetsuit launch like this?
Yeah, I mean it's funny, like when you hear sort of the roll call of all those legends in the surf world, it's like, yeah, wow, it's pretty neat to think our day to day and certain steps of this process definitely involve that whole crew. I think we really try to go through a pretty arduous process to field test all of our prototypes and all of our design iterations before we get ready to take something to market. And I think those are the really unique opportunities where we get to leverage all of these incredible, iconic people in the surf world, that they'll take all of these kind of wild, weird things that we're doing or prototypes that we've made and, and put them through its paces. So, we're not only are we getting feedback from everybody here on campus and the design team and the whole crew that Mackenzie riled through, but we have a really robust lineup of people in the surf world that are getting access to these suits before we get ready to go to market. And it's really cool. We're able to get a lot of anecdotal insight from them based upon suits they've had in the past and suits we've created in the past, and how we can sort of take all that intel and also help drive it into the things that we're working on, when we're going through some of the smaller paces here on campus.
Right. And it's so interesting too, because I think I'm sure it's not just the surfing world. It's probably like consumers everywhere, for whatever reason, over the last couple of decades have become kind of obsessed with like company origin stories. And there's a lot of like, I want the trade news, and maybe that's just life under kind of the capitalist umbrella. Anyway, Patagonia's story, as we've talked about it, it's pretty unique and it's pretty well known, with Yvon Chouinard's story, with the idea of getting into, climbing and developing these products that make, the lives of climbers that much better, hard goods products, and then the soft goods that come around it, and the story of sustainability, and in a lot of cases actually kind of foregoing huge revenue gains in some cases to do what's better for the environment. And I bring all that up because I'd imagine that working on a Patagonia wetsuit launch is a unique challenge even within the surfing world because of the principles of Patagonia that you're bringing into the process. Is that fair to say, Mackenzie, in your experience?
100%. I think, wetsuits in general are challenging because they're in such harsh environments with the salt and the sun, and they're constantly being stretched and pulled and stepped on and peed in and not rinsed out and put in the back of cars and forgotten about for weeks at a time. But, at Patagonia specifically, like, we really pride ourselves on quality and making products that are the highest quality. And so that's definitely challenging for wetsuits because they're put through this, big test of the environment. So we really do our best to make sure that the consumer is set up for success. And a lot of that comes from testing the materials. Buddy kind of touched on field testing. Like, we field test everything and make sure that it holds up for time before we're able to commercialize and launch the product. So I think just, Patagonia ethos is really the center of every product creation, and wetsuits are really, no different.
Yeah. And I also hearing Mackenzie talk about some of the changes we've made in terms of like our material package and stuff, and going off, Dave, your question into some of the challenges of what it might look like when you're going to, say, make a product at Patagonia. We really, we have a thick filter for how we can source our materials, things that we can put into our product, because, they're the underlying responsibility code for how we want to go about sourcing our materials, things we can use. So real specific example, the excitement we have for the recycled nylon that's going into this iteration of suit is a huge win. Now, we knew nylon was going to have these performance categories that would be a bit superior to, say, the polyester blend that we were using, but we were really working through the years of design iteration to find a recycled nylon supply source that could meet the standards that we hold ourselves to if we're going to introduce something into the wetsuit. So yes, we have to look at things through a completely different lens here at Patagonia when it comes down to actually product development that, it is ingrained in our ethos. So it's a little bit of it's not a little bit of a challenge. It's a big challenge.
Right.
But one that, we hold, real close to everything, every decision that we make.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a community challenge as well, and probably has been forever in the surfing world, right? Because we all rely on a healthy ocean, a healthy ecosystem to actually enjoy the thing we're doing. But a lot of times, whether it's, wetsuits or surfboards or whatever, it's they're not always the best thing in terms of sustainable practices. And I think the conversation in the last decade across the surfing world's gotten a lot louder around this particular part. And, we've had a lot of conversations with shapers too, where they go, well, what's better? Is it to build a more environmentally disposable high performance surfboard, or to build one that is going to last much longer? Like, what's better, a dozen of these ones or one of these ones? And it's a real challenge. And I think that probably comes over to wetsuits as well, because Patagonia, unless I'm mistaken, it's not a company that relaunches its line every year, right? I don't think you guys have an expectation that we're going to build a suit, you're going to need another one next year. You guys are really kind of working on not only the sustainability side of developing wetsuits, but the durability side of having the customer being able to use it for seasons at a time.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like you said, we don't come out with a new wetsuit every year. Like, we have no need to. We only come out with a new wetsuit or any product really when there is like not only a need, but also when we're ready to do so and we're ready to bring it to market. So, we test everything to try to put it to the absolute extreme conditions to make sure that it'll pass all of our standards. But so like right now, our wetsuits just launched in fall 23. We probably won't come out with a new wetsuit until we've seen how this wetsuit performs in the market, and then see what improvements could be made upon that in the future. But we have no need to pump out a new wetsuit every season or every year. Yeah.
Right.
And like the other kind of wild card to that whole sort of mindset about our gear and design iterations and when suits come out versus when we wait till we find these, discoveries of what we want to adjust or change or modify, but we're then offering the repair component to the wetsuit, which really doesn't exist. There is not a platform that is as committed or engaged to keeping the gear that you have and the suit that you've already purchased going the distance longer than one would expect to be the case. So that also is like a game changer in terms of the mindset of the consumer or the surfer about like the relationship with their product, with their wetsuit, and how it can go the test of time, longer than maybe one would think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, we really design and develop our wetsuits to last for multiple seasons, not just one season. Like, a lot of people are okay with buying a new suit every season. They look forward to it and want that. But our suits are definitely designed in the intention to last for many seasons, which I feel like is pretty unique to our wetsuits.
Right. And Mackenzie, you mentioned it, this next generation of, ULEX regulator wetsuits is in the market. Like, people can go to Patagonia.com, they can get a suit, they can go to retailers and get a suit. What's been the feedback that you guys have been hearing about the new suits already?
I mean, I think the biggest feedback is that it's really hard to tell a difference between our new ULEX suits and neoprene suits. I think just with the comfort and stretch characteristics of the new suit, they're on par with neoprene suits in the market. I think that's been the biggest feedback, is just how far Patagonia wetsuits have come as a whole from when we first launched a ULEX suit in 2016 to now. There's been improvements in the ULEX, in the materials, in the seam placement, the construction, everything, and just seeing like you were saying earlier, people are brand loyalists now, and they care about the origin story of the brand. So we've had people that are hardcore Patagonia users that have been with us from the beginning of ULEX to now. And I feel like their feedback has been so interesting and hear of like all the improvements that have been made over time. So
Yeah. And I think we can wholeheartedly say this is probably the biggest overhaul to our suit line in over a decade.
Yeah.
So it again, also piggybacking what we were saying earlier about the decisions that go into what a redesign looks like in that time frame. Like, we make those decisions when the time is appropriate, and that time had come, and we found ourselves at this intersection, and everything that we pumped into this suit is literally a culmination of a decade of learning, on top of, taking a hard right off of the neoprene railroad track and going to a completely different material in 2016. So it's like there is a history here. And to start hearing the feedback for these suits in the market and people surfing them, and we've personally been in them since we got our first design samples back in the wintertime, and it's night and day. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I hope everyone goes and checks them out. They are, I can attest, awesome wetsuits. They're very comfortable. They're very warm. They're very durable. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we will dive into the backgrounds of both Buddy and Mackenzie. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. This is the lineup. We are here with Buddy Pendergast and Mackenzie Warner of Patagonia Wetsuits. A ton of our listeners, they either work in and around surfing or sort of outdoor industry. A lot of them want to get into it. And we talked about a little bit before the break, and Patagonia is such a unique company. But, Mackenzie, maybe we'll start with you for the listeners. Can you explain what your job title is and what that entails kind of on a week in, week out basis for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a material developer at Patagonia. So what that essentially means is that I'm responsible for researching, developing, and improving raw materials and material supply chains that meet Patagonia's performance, quality, environmental, and social standards. So basically, I guess it's fiber to fabric. So for wetsuits specifically, that would be developing the liner materials for the wetsuit. So picking like the appropriate fibers, the appropriate knit constructions, depending on the end goal of the product.
Very cool. And how did you get to be where you are? How long have you been at Patagonia? What did you have to study to kind of get into this role? I'm curious.
I've been at Patagonia for about a year and a half. Before that, I was doing wetsuit and thermoregulation research at Cal State San Marcos down in San Diego. So I feel like I have a weird niche background in wetsuits. So I started out as in undergrad. I started out as an intern doing the wetsuit research there. And that kind of sparked my interest in textiles and how the body interacts with different materials and how that affects human performance. And so we did a lot of research looking at heat loss in surfers wearing wetsuits. So where surfers essentially get cold and lose the most heat, and how that would then relate to the creation of a wetsuit, like what areas should have more thickness or what areas should have different materials depending on how the body interacts with them. So I did that for 6 years prior to coming to Patagonia. So I did that while I studied exercise physiology in my undergrad degree. And then I did my master's program at Cal State San Marcos as well to be able to essentially just continue the surf research because it was fun. So I got a master's in exercise physiology, specifically studying thermal comfort and perception of surfers wearing wetsuits.
So it sounds like you had a surfing background before you went into academia. I'm curious, once you went in there, did you ever have a surf after you started studying it where you just blanked out and enjoyed your surf? Or were you constantly like, oh man, like, the cuffs on this could really use some improvement or something?
I mean, it's funny, like, anytime I surf now, I think my mind just thinks about, I'm like, oh, like what if we did this in this part of the wetsuit? Like how would that improve warmth or comfort? So I feel like my brain doesn't really stop when I wear a wetsuit, but it's also a great, surfing is a great outlet for exercise and enjoying nature and but it's also a great creative environment, I guess, to think about wetsuits and different little nuances to them. So I think I just kind of don't know. It's just, that's, I guess, what my surf sessions are, unless if I'm not surfing in a wetsuit.
So no more meditation for you, but your sacrifice is benefiting us all. So we very much appreciate
yeah,
that.
It's perfect. Yeah.
And Buddy, you've been at Patagonia a little bit longer than Mackenzie, I think. What is your current role, and give us kind of the TikTok in terms of where you came from and how you got to your current position?
Yeah. Before me, I affectionately refer to Mackenzie as the mad scientist, and all of her background, I think, is of incredible value to everything that we do here. And not only does her brain bring huge attributes to all the stuff that we do, but she's probably got one of the meanest frontside turns I think out of anybody on the surf team here. So we're also really proud of that. Yeah. For me, this actually October will be my 8-year anniversary at Patagonia. My background is quite different from Mackenzie's. For myself and the company, I actually started in the retail spectrum, which also I'm really proud of. I think Patagonia does an incredible job of fostering a workplace, no matter where you are in the company chain or in the company environment, to sort of explore things that you're curious about and apply yourself in a direction of something that you're motivated to follow. I used to be in a management role for Patagonia Surf Shop in New York City on the Bowery, which was kind of an iconic location on the East Coast for all things surf. And it was an incredible time where I kind of came into this really beautiful, unique world of all things Patagonia and pretty much fell in love. It was an unexpected journey. And in the summer of 2019, I actually got to travel with the wetsuit repair crew on their East Coast tour, which was the first one that they embarked on the East Coast, where we traveled from the Outer Banks all the way up to Maine over a 6-week period, with stops along the way, engaging with the local surf community and offering wetsuit repairs. And it was literally on that trip, in those moments, where I got to observe the work that goes behind the scenes into the wetsuits. Because, we kind of always knew about it, but it really was sort of the eye-opening experience for me, where I was like, wow, I've been surfing my entire life, and I've never been exposed to this kind of quality or caliber of work, or even care to the garment for a wetsuit. I think that is a part of this conversation we're having here today is, like, we've been surfing for so long, and I never was exposed to this operation or to the care and to the potential of the suit. And from that moment forward, it kind of springboarded me into where I am now. And fast forward a few years later, I even started my own repair thing in New York when I was learning everything on my own and getting my blind stitch machine and actually getting all of my tactile skills that I could build up. So when it was time to come out here and join the wetsuit crew, I could be, as up to speed as possible in terms of actual, the physical elements that go into building our suits, repairing our suits, designing and building prototypes, all of those things. It was kind of a self-taught journey. And then once I got in with the crew here, it was just like off to the races.
Makes a lot of sense. And I mean, we think a lot of times, young people are coming up, or young people listen to the podcast, or they read interviews about people in the industry, and they think, oh yeah, I want to be there right now. But they don't quite understand, like, hey, it's like, even those people there right now, the ones that are the most effective, actually get their hands dirty every single day. When I got to visit you guys in the Forge not too long ago, we had this great conversation, but everyone's just hammering away, like fixing wetsuits at the same time. And even your background in retail, I'm sure, gave you a great perspective. I started at retail in Rip Curl, like right around the turn of the century, and was there for years. And you learn so much just interacting with customers about what's working, what's not working, like what's coming back in through repairs, that it's sort of this invaluable education that at the time it can be frustrating, I'm sure. Like, here's another thing.
Yes.
But down the track, you're like, I've internalized that, and I actually know how to approach this problem that might not be like a one-to-one, but the things I learned there, I'm applying to this, and it makes sense. And I think it's valuable for the listeners to get that, where it's like, hey, it's good to start wherever you can, because whatever perspective you're going to get from that experience will help down the track.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. If you have a curiosity into something in the industry, or a goal or a dream to be in a certain place where you want to be, like taking any of the earliest steps in the beginning and getting your foot in the door and gaining as much knowledge and accumulating as much experiences as you can along the way is only going to elevate, you as an individual for when the time comes for you to step into a role that, you sort of dreamed about for a long time.
Yeah.
I think we talked about a little bit, Patagonia has a pretty clear external expression of what it is and what it stands for. But I'm curious to get both your takes on, what are maybe some of the misconceptions that people have about the people who work there, the kinds of people who work there, what it's like versus the reality. I'm not asking you to be negative or anything, but I having the good fortune of living up here near Patagonia, I know a number of people that work there. There's certainly not just one type of person that works there.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of people that are a bit removed from it think like, oh, you have to be this kind of person, you have to believe these kind of things, etc. Mackenzie, maybe start with you. Like, what's been your experience in terms of just that public conception of what it's like versus the reality?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's some stereotypes, like we all don't eat granola and don't take showers. But I think there's a lot of people are very well aware of our, like flexible work policy. Like, Yvonne Chouinard wrote about it and let my people go surfing. That's definitely true at Patagonia. Like if the surf's good, you can stop what you're doing and go surfing. Or if the temps are good to go climbing, like you go climbing, or if it's a powder day, like you go do that. So there's a lot of flexibility in the work schedule. I think that's definitely something that's been there since the start of Patagonia and continues as Patagonia progresses. And then as far as the people go, I think people are drawn to Patagonia for a lot of different reasons. We're not all surfers, climbers, and snowboarders. Like there's a lot of people that are drawn to Patagonia for, to help with social impact, or people are drawn to Patagonia because they want to, make a difference in certain ways. It's just not all, we're all drawn for different reasons, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I won't read the whole quote, but around this time last year, Patagonia founder Yvonne Chouinard wrote this very famous letter talking about, 100% of the company's voting stock transferring to the Patagonia Purpose Trust, which was created to protect the company's values. 100% of the non-voting stocks given to the Holdfast Collective, which is nonprofit to fighting the environmental crisis and defending nature. Is such a, and I won't go on, but everyone can kind of Google and read the letter from themselves. But it really was a moment that not only arrested the outdoor industry, but kind of industries everywhere. This was a letter that was covered in all industries, in all countries, everywhere. And it really set a marker that was consistent with kind of the values that the company has worked through over the course of its history. And I'm not asking you to comment on like how real that feels every day for you, both challenges and positives, but it does feel that authenticity is like a dirty word that gets thrown around and probably misused quite a lot. It really does feel that the people who work there and the programs that come out of it and the products that come out of it do anchor to a very, very real and genuine belief in what it's doing. Is that fair to say, Buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the history of Patagonia is deep and long. And I think, getting to call this place home for work feels really special. And going on the whole authenticity thing and the consumer market, and there's a lot out there to sort of digest and take in. But I personally have really never been a part of anything where not only is, we talk the talk, but walk the walk. And I think the commitment that the company as a whole, and obviously, that Yvonne set out, is something that like no one can really shake a stick at. And that makes you motivated. It inspires you to kind of show up and put your best foot forward. And I think, like Mackenzie said earlier too, the lore of all the things happen here draw in a tremendous amount of people with a tremendous amount of backgrounds that are inspired to be a part of something that actually has a legitimate opportunity to make some serious change for the good. Um, so, it's cool. It's a special world to be in, and one that I don't think we take for granted. And as we continue to see the company evolve and we continue to see the goals get loftier and the commitment that was set forth, at the 50th anniversary last year, I think it's a really exciting time for the company as a whole. And, the sky's the limit. I kind of use that saying a lot sometimes, but when you feel that you're part of something as special as this, it kind of feels true.
It's a company that produces products for so many different disciplines, surfing, kite surfing, fly fishing, trail running, climbing, mountain biking, snow, and so many things. How much interaction do you guys have between, what you do and kind of those other disciplines, both from just an interaction standpoint and like an activity standpoint in your personal lives? You get to kind of interact with people who do different things, and maybe you get to learn how to do different things too, but also just from a product standpoint. I'm sure that there are things that happen in the climbing division or whatever it's called that you can apply to surfing and vice versa. Mackenzie, how much kind of interaction and collaboration do you have personally and professionally across the building there?
Yeah. I've surfed my whole life since I was 4 years old. I've been climbing for maybe 5 or so years and snowboard. So I feel like I have a pretty good, relationship with all of those and understanding of those sports as a whole, which I think really helps with creating a product for those different categories. Understanding the needs that each product would need to, like, good attributes for each product. So in material development, we work with all kinds of cross-functional teams. So we develop materials. There's maybe 10 of us, and we all work on different categories. But we work with, the Alpine team, the mountain bike team, the surf team, and develop materials for all these different categories. So of course, each specific category has core products that are needed for that. So like for alpinism is going to be very different to a product needed for like casual, a casual day bouldering. So I feel like we do a really good job of having those core products that fit a really specific need for the community. So that would be like wetsuits for surfing or like an alpine suit for climbing. And then we just came out with this, I think it's called the Big Water Foul Weather suit. That we just that was probably, I didn't work on that project, but that was a big collaboration between the surf team, the alpine team, and the fishing team to create this like beautiful kit meant for open water sailing. So they took inspiration from like cuffs used on wetsuits, and then took inspiration from waterproof breathables used for alpine climbing. So I feel like there's a lot of cross collaboration in general at Patagonia, and especially across different product categories like that too.
Which category is the biggest pain in the ass for you, Mackenzie, to work on?
We can put it on the hot seat.
We can bleep it out. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I think they're all, all the categories are fun.
Oh, good. How diplomatic.
In their own ways.
Yeah, but Mackenzie's too nice.
Yeah, go on, buddy. You can name names. Oh, man. All right. Well, I mean, I'll close up this segment. We could probably talk for hours just on this particular topic, but we want to get to the next one. Buddy, for people that want to kind of, and I know no path is going to be exactly the same, but if a young person was in school right now and they're like, I really want to do what you do, I really want to do what Mackenzie does, what would you recommend they do? Like, just to get their start or to get their experience or to make a contact with the company? Like, what would be your recommendation?
That's a really good question. I think one of the things this made me think of a snowboarding podcast that I would listen to, and I've listened to all like kind of my heroes in that world and how they started their companies or how they got to where they were, and the journey that took them there. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I pulled from one episode one time is like, reach out to people that are doing the things that you want to do. I feel like in today's day and age, one of the greatest tools that we have is accessibility to so many different people. So if you have a path that you're curious about, or if you have a particular world of excitement that speaks to you, if it's in the industry, if it's in the outdoor industry, like there are so many resources out there for you to tap into, especially for the world we live in right now. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask, and don't be afraid to ask questions about how people got there, and to look maybe to somebody for a mentorship or whatever it may be to help guide you along the way. You don't have to feel like you have to do it all on your own. And I think, for me, that was, from my personal experience, I've learned everything from somebody else, like everybody's taught me something along the way, and that journey still continues of learning. So, when you're kind of going through those phases of figuring some of that stuff out for yourself, maybe when you're a bit younger, reach out to people that are doing the thing that gets you excited, and see how you can foster a relationship and learn from them.
Very cool. Mackenzie, anything to add on that for listeners looking to kind of pursue similar avenues of employment?
Yeah, I mean, I think just finding something that you're passionate about to begin with is a good start, and then figure out how you can, make that passion part of your work. And I think that will allow you to have a lot of longevity in your career. And then it makes you want to, you're a part of whatever you're working and passionate about. Like for Buddy and I, for wetsuits, I feel like that's a really weird thing to be passionate about, but we are very passionate about wetsuits. That allows us to, push the envelope with innovation and make a more durable product that's going to have less environmental impact. And part of our job is we get to go surfing and test wetsuits and talk about wetsuits. And it's something that is kind of the center of our work, and it's super fun. So I think just starting with finding what you're passionate about, and maybe, what niche that you can kind of put yourself in to make yourself stand out in the industry too.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we're going to take one more break to get a word in from our sponsors, and we will finish up right when we get back. All right, we're back. This is the lineup. I'm Dave Prodan here with Buddy Pendergast and Mackenzie Warner from Patagonia Wetsuits. Guys, thank you so much for the conversation today. One of the things that we've talked about, and it's been primarily focused inside the Patagonia company and its ethos and the products that get developed out of that. But, it is that tension in the outdoor market, and specifically the surfing world, between I want to be a surfer, I want to have the best equipment, whether it's a surfboard or a wetsuit or board shorts or whatever. But then the environmental component is so integral to me actually enjoying the thing I want to do. And the surfing industry has not had a great history with producing products that are great for the environment, but that conversation's been getting really loud. I actually believe there's a documentary that's coming out called The Big C, and Paul Evans at Stab Magazine wrote about it, and it was just the link between neoprene manufacturing and the cancer it causes in the communities where it's made. And that's one of a dozen different examples that are out there right now. But it does feel like the conversation that Patagonia has been driving through its product manufacturing, even seeing Ulex kind of turn up in different companies' wetsuits as well. Do you guys have conversations with other sort of product producers in the industry about best practices, best materials, et cetera, or is it all pretty siloed?
Do you want to take? I'll start. I mean,
well, we've never kept anything a secret.
Exactly.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's the first. If there's like a gangbuster to that question, all of the things that Patagonia has set forward in terms of its product development to put the environment first, in terms of all the decisions that go into how we do what we do, it's never a secret.
Yeah.
So for us specifically here at Wetsuits, there's been a tremendous amount of collaboration. Hub Hubbard, who is the wetsuit guru here at Patagonia, and basically also was the one who took that very big first step in the direction of natural rubber alternatives, has been explicit about getting this information out to other wetsuit manufacturers at large. That way the conversation can continue to change in a direction where we can find alternative production methods, material methods that fit other business models for other wetsuit manufacturers, but that there can be a real conversation about how we can better the things that we're creating.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to piggyback on that too, I think the Stab article was amazing that they wrote on the Big C. And I know they started it as a Stab premium, and then they released it to everyone, which I thought was really cool because it's such a important topic. And the Big C, it's amazing that it's being made by these independent filmmakers that have no funding from the industry and just want to tell the story of the harmful effects of chloroprene wetsuit production. So I just think that's, really important that's being made and is being talked about. It's been no secret in the surf industry that chloroprene rubber is bad. And the fact that this is becoming more mainstream knowledge is great. And then Patagonia, made the choice in 2016 to move to ULEX. And one of the things, and Hub was a big part of that. And one of the things when implementing ULEX is that Patagonia didn't want to keep the technology for themselves. Like, we're in relative to wetsuit production, we are very, very small percentage within the industry as a whole. So by just us switching to ULEX is amazing and great, but to have the industry switch to ULEX would have a way bigger impact. And so when we adopted ULEX, we made that technology available for everyone. Like, we could have kept it and not shared it, but allowing any wetsuit manufacturer to use that, and whether or not that's their choice is up to them, but it's available for all wetsuit makers to use. And we have seen more companies adopt it, like Neat Essentials, Sia, I think Billabong uses it. So it's
Finisterre.
Really, Finisterre. Yeah, there's a lot of smaller brands that have been using ULEX in their wetsuits, which is great to see.
Yeah.
And I think that's like also, I think I just like, that is sort of like a nod of the cap a nod of the cap to Patagonia as a whole. I mean, like Mackenzie said, we're a relatively small operation for wetsuit production in the surf industry at large, but in true form to the company's philosophies. And Hub setting out on the initiative, back in 2014 to 16 era of saying, yeah, we're this small operation, but we want to be the ones to, and we also have the opportunity to be the ones to kind of step out on this experimental leg to find this alternative material and run through a lot of hurdles and a lot of bumps in the road that we experienced when we took such a drastic change in terms of how we wanted to make our wetsuits. And part of that also was inherently knowing that if we could be the ones to make some of those big changes and take some of those hits on the chin, the end all goal is for the entire surf industry to have the opportunity to make some of these changes. So there's a lot of power in that too, that I think is a big component to the story of like why we do the things that we do.
Yeah. And I think a lot more, as, consumers are becoming more aware of the materials used in products and becoming more aware of the supply chain and becoming more aware of the environmental impact, I think it will be really consumers driving companies to choose to move to ULEX. And I think that's really going to move the industry is more consumer demand for that too.
It's such I know we talked about it a couple times too. It's such an interesting tightrope to walk in a way, because as we said, you guys are changing the materials and the supply chain and the sustainability components in developing the actual products. You're also building products that are intended to last longer, so the consumer doesn't need to buy them every year, which isn't always the case. But again, kind of under the banner of capitalism, it's that tightrope you got to walk, where it's like, well, yeah, we want to thrive as a company, but that doesn't mean mass consumption at all times. And I think, we talked about this when I went by the Forge the other day, and just speaking as a consumer of one person, like sometimes it's so nice to simplify your life, where I'm like, I have one wetsuit, I have one surfboard, I just enjoy those things for as long as they last. And, I've even talked to surfers on tour that sometimes just get paralyzed by choice, where it's like, I got 15 boards, I don't know which one to ride. And it's like, you don't need that, or whatever it is. And I just think that's an interesting kind of shift you're seeing across the board, and people going, yeah, I want better made things. I also need less of them over the timeline, which is both things are better for the environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's just a continuing shift in the paradigm of what it is to be a consumer in today's market at all. I mean, the disposability factor of anything out there in the world, or any good or any product, I think is grown to an alarming rate. Yeah. And we as a society are trying to be a little bit more cautious, or a little bit more careful about some of the decisions that we make, and the things that we buy, or the things that we need to do the things that we do. And if we can play a role in that, in terms of making more of a conscientious decision behind whatever it is that you need to have to do the things that you want to do, i.e. if it happens to be a wetsuit for surfing, then we want to give you all of the knowledge and all of the education to make the best decision possible, and then also give you resources to make that product go as long as it can go.
Right.
And everybody should we should all try to find that sweet spot. It's like the analogy you put of a tightrope is really accurate, and it's not easy. We're not claiming it's an easy thing to do. There's a lot of factors that go into decision making when purchasing goods, and all of those things that we're completely aware of. But I think it's just if we can make a collective shift in the right direction, then the goods over time will only outweigh the negatives. And I think we're really starting to see that now.
Right. So Mackenzie, as we said, the next generation of ULEX regulator wetsuits is out in the market. It is a top tier wetsuit, as we've discussed on the podcast, guaranteed to last for 100 years. So you've got some time on your hands. But no, in all seriousness, what does the rest of your 2023 and 2024 look like for your role, Mackenzie, now that this launches out? What's next for you? And I'm not just talking about the surfing space, just kind of in your job for the next 18 months.
Yeah. I mean, we launch products at Patagonia twice a year. So we launch them in the fall and in the spring, I guess, is what that season would be. So our material development calendar is constantly moving. So even though wetsuits, the next iteration of wetsuits might not come out for a few years, I'm already doing research and trialing different developments for those next suits. So that's kind of the case with all developments. We are unique in the fact that we work, 3 years in the future here. So I always have a hard time getting straight what year it is, what season we're launching, what development season I'm working in. So right now, I'm working on products that might not launch until 2027 or 2028 because it takes us a long time to vet materials and test product before we're comfortable with launching them. So I guess the next 18 months, I would be working towards developing materials for sometime in the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm working on our next wetsuits. I'm working on some technical knits, so some tank tops, leggings, and then working on some swimwear stuff as well.
It's good job security in that, right? Where you're like, hey, my stuff's not coming out till 2027. I've got you keep me around. No, I get it. I get it. And Buddy, we had that cool story about how this generation of ULEX regulator suits came out from basically that time in the pandemic when everyone was working in the Forge together. So many people were surfing because, no one was going to the office or going into school. You couldn't get new stuff, so things were coming back for repair. And you and your team were kind of collating the data on these things need improvement, those things need improvement, and develop this line of wetsuits, which is fantastic. But when you're looking at the next 18 months now that this line's out in the market, what does it look like for you in your position?
Totally. I mean, I think the next leg of this journey will probably be, it's kind of a strange. We're excited to see the feedback on this suit, and to see where and if there are any other hangups. I mean, undoubtedly, when you're creating a product such as a wetsuit, like the learning curve doesn't just stop or plateau. It's a forever journey. So, for us, I think when we have a lot of these suits that are now, hitting the market and being served, we're looking forward to the feedback phase. Then we can take all of that, learning 2.0 from where we are, and then working with the rest of the wetsuit team, working with designer Garrett and developer Andrew and Hub and Mackenzie and everybody that sort of like pools all of their knowledge to continue the evolution of the suit. So it'll be exciting, and I'd be inclined to think that we'll see less of our suits coming through for repair because of the changes that we've made along this design iteration. Like you said, the years over the pandemic, our wetsuit repair facility jumped up 200% in repairs. We had 5,000 wetsuits come through our door in like a 24-month period. Of which, we fixed over 4,000 of those suits. We were at like a 90% repair rate, which we're really proud of. And we worked our ass off to make that possible for the surf community. So yeah, this next phase, hopefully it doesn't look as daunting as that particular time period for us as a whole. But we're excited to get the feedback for the suit, and then to be able to build on that and be prepared for the next round, which is cool. And we're still also experimenting in the wetsuit forge, and Mackenzie will come down with different material packages, and we'll make Frankenstein suits. And I think that's the beauty of what we do here. Also, we don't have to farm that work out to our production facility. So we build all of our prototypes on site. We can do weird zipper entries and play with different materials, and that's always a constant. That's always sort of a baseline here. The product innovation never stops. So for us in the wetsuit forge, we're just ready to keep tinkering.
I love it. Well, you guys should be proud of yourselves. You got a successful product launch. It's autumn. We should be getting waves in town. Like, you should get to go surfing now, is my 2 cents. So,
yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you spending all this time talking to me about it. It's just really interesting, and the product is fantastic. We did put out a feeler to some of our listeners that have questions for you. We got a lot back. We've whittled them down to 3. So thanks to everyone that wrote in at the lineup pod. And I'll just tackle these for you guys. Maybe we'll start with Mackenzie. First question is from @manbackwards, who asks, why is blind stitching and glued seams better for wetsuits?
Ooh, I feel like we could both answer this question.
Yeah, feel free to tag team
different,
it.
From different perspectives.
Too. Yeah. So all of our suits are triple glued and blind stitched. So that means they take the glue and put it over 3 times on the material, put the panels together, and then blind stitch over that. So and there would be no power, then we wouldn't add a power seam on top of that. So a couple different benefits just from like a construction standpoint is that not having a power seam there and only doing the blind stitch over the glue allows for more stretch at the panels. And so you don't get as much tension there, so they won't kind of like rip as easily. And 2, I think from like a repairability standpoint, Buddy, I don't know if you want to take that one, but
you're there. You're you're there. From a repairability standpoint, the liquid power seam covers the entire seam placement of a wetsuit. And for us here, what another component we're excited about this redesign is our suits going to the blind stitch. We don't have to heat up and remove the power seam and then lay down a blind stitch over the area that has seen failure from UV exposure and cracking. You've all seen a liquid power tape seam on the outside that have split and cracked. They all do it. So, for us now to be able to just work with a stitch system is light years improved in terms of turnaround time. And that's a win for everybody because suits are coming in, they're getting fixed, and they're going out faster.
Yeah. And then too, I guess just also from the environmental standpoint too of not having a power seam and the environmental impact of adding that, and then the environmental impact of it actually just flaking off and just kind of
Yeah.
being useless at this
Yeah.
point, I think is a big win too. And I don't know how familiar people are with the blind stitch, and Buddy, you would again probably be the one to explain this best, but it goes when you stitch a blind stitch, it goes through just part of the material. So like the top third of the wetsuit panel, so it doesn't actually penetrate all the way through, so you don't get water leakage through the suit. It just stays in the top part and kind of is an extra hold to the glue, but the glue itself is extremely sticky and solid, and the blind stitch just kind of reinforces that.
100%. Yep.
Great answer. Next question is from @Ben_Pereira, who starts with Buddy is the man. And then asks, what's the worst thing for your suit? Sun, sunscreen, or THC in the urine? This is very specific. This is a very specific question.
It's a very
I'm excited.
specific
I want
question.
to hear the answer, though. I'm interested.
Yeah, that's a really good question. As much as I would like to say some funny things, it's I think ultimately the big suit killer is really the sun.
Mm-hmm.
UV exposure to the material compound, and that really also lands in Mackenzie's world in terms of trying to elevate material performance of wetsuits. I mean, we're in the sun all the time when we surf wearing the suit. We take the suit off, and when we dry it, we want to get it dry before a second session. We dry it in the sun, even though we know we should be drying it in the shade, and so forth and so forth. So the sun kind of takes the cake for me in terms of really beating up a suit. So I can't express how important it is when you're drying your wetsuit to really dry it by the waist in the shade. Don't let it hang by the shoulders. And giving your suit a fresh rinse. Salt is insanely corrosive. I mean, look at any vehicle on the East Coast that's over 10 years old that's driven through the winters, like it's rusted out. Salt destroys everything. And even though it might not be the cues might not be initially visible, the buildup of that salt in the suit is going to break down that glue bond between the panels. It's going to break down the material knit. I mean, every wetsuit goes through that phase of breakdown. And if you want to prolong the suit's life, it's keeping it freshly rinsed and keeping it out of the sun as much as possible. And the THCP, I don't know, the jury's still out on that one.
It's getting a pass for right now. I think the majority of our listeners are listening to this, and as they're looking at their wetsuit in the sun right now and going like, all right.
Yeah, we're all guilty of it, myself included. But man, it will go a long way if you can really just try your hardest to mitigate that exposure.
Absolutely.
Love it. Last question that we've culled from the herd here is from @daniel.fly.mel. I'll target Mackenzie for this one, who asks, what's the best preventative maintenance to get the most out of your wetsuit? I think we just kind of answered it, but maybe there's some other tips that you have for people.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, rinsing it out when you're done using it would be a minimum. Salt water is, like Buddy said, super corrosive, and you want to rinse that off to allow the wetsuit to last longer. Drying your wetsuit in the shade is a big one. Let me think.
You know what's really cool that was a little learning experience for me in terms of jumping into wetsuit world. Zipper corrosion is something that happens at any extent of time. There's a Gear runs this zipper lubricant that keeps, whether it's the plastic components or some of the metal components that are in your zipper slider and the teeth of your zipper ladder, where they can get super dehydrated from the salt and the sun. And it looks like a chapstick, and you can put it on your suit periodically, depending upon how frequently you're in the water. But that alone will let your zipper go the test of time. I mean, we've all been there where you have this incredible suit and the zipper fails and you're like, shit out of luck. So that's a small little tidbit that, we hear the sun and this and that, but keep your zipper going. It's literally a chapstick zipper lubricant that will like extend the life of the zipper on your wetsuit. Like that was a huge win.
Yeah, I think another one too is that, they make like solutions to wash your wetsuit in, but you can pretty much just do the same with diluted vinegar water. So if your wetsuit starts getting a stink to it, that means there's probably bacteria eating away at all the materials and things. So you'll want to soak it in a vinegar, like a diluted vinegar solution, that'll help kind of kill the bacteria and make your wetsuit not smell like a dead animal, which is, nice when you leave it in the back of your car. But I think just like the more you can do to prevent damage to the suit, obviously will allow it to last longer, and then you'll have to buy less wetsuits and there'll be less environmental impact and you'll be warmer and happier.
Not smelling like a dead animal has
advantages
to being in the ocean too. You want to be left alone. I'm all for it. Yeah,
that really really smell bad, and I haven't quite figured out a way to get the smell out of those yet.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the next 18 months. You're like, you know what?
I find a solution to make wetsuits not stinky. Yeah.
I like it. Well, thanks to everyone who wrote in for at the lineup pod. We are now down to our final segment. This is the lightning round. So these are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can. Just for organizational purposes, I'll ask the question, then maybe Mackenzie, you answer, then Buddy, and we'll just go through the 10 that way.
Oof. Okay.
All right. I'm ready.
First question. If you personally could have one board setup for the rest of your life, a single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
Twin fins all day.
Buddy?
Twin.
Okay, good.
Twin.
We're in sync so far. Mackenzie, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Ginger tea.
Burrito.
Ginger tea.
The speed's good. The speed's really good. You guys are doing great.
Yeah.
Burrito or pizza?
Burrito. For sure.
I'm from New York. Pizza.
Okay. Last book you read?
I read Barbarian Days.
Good one.
The Road. Colin McCarthy. Yeah.
Best surf film ever?
Oh
man.
Oh no, this is gonna take. I mean, Kelly Slater in Black and White is great. Trilogy was always a favorite of mine with Andy Irons, Taj, and who was the third one? Parko.
Joel.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
That was always a favorite.
Those are good answers.
Football. Yeah. I'm gonna go football schmootball.
Oh man, that's a great one. I don't think that's come up yet. Great one. Deep pool.
A little bit of a deep cut, but that really used to get me fired up when I was younger to surf.
Excellent. One wave you never have to go back to.
I don't know. I don't really have one. I enjoy every wave.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I
feel like I love them all. There might be some that weren't my favorite, but every wave teaches you something. That sounds pretty corny, but I'll stick with it.
That's fair. The answers will either land right in that space or someone has one at the ready. They're like, this place. And I'm like, oh, wow.
This one.
That was definitive.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's a little more fun. And you could dreamcast this scenario. If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life, which would it be?
I mean, any right-hand point break, but is it crowded? Like, what are the parameters?
You just your friends, just yourself, a billion people, whatever you want. Dreamcast.
Oh man,
there's got to be. I want to hear a named wave though. You got to give me some.
One.
Yeah, we can't. There's a couple maybe I'm not allowed to say on the podcast.
That's fair. We can bleep them out and make everyone frustrated. That's good.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
That is such a hard decision. It has to have a barrel section. It has to have a long wall. I don't know, J-Bay maybe? I've never been there, but that sounds like a good wave.
That would satisfy. That works. That works.
Okay. I mean, how can we also not just throw Rincon in?
I know, Rincon's right here. Yeah.
I mean, if you're saying that I get to surf this wave with my friends and there's no one there,
Rincon.
I'm gonna have to go with that. We got a few little quote unquote secret spots that pick up some North Swell below Ventura, that we will name nameless.
That's fair, but you are allowed to. You get to surf Rincon now by yourself as a function of coming on the lineup
Yeah.
podcast.
Like
so you're good to go.
Good decision.
Just let them know.
Yeah,
You're like, I was on the podcast. They said it was cool. Next question. Best person to share a lineup with?
Oh, I don't know. Your friends, Buddy. Buddy is a great person to share a lineup with. He is like the most positive person I have ever surfed with. He's so encouraging and hilarious, and it's just a good day.
Well, the pressure's on you now, Buddy, to reciprocate or not.
Yeah.
Don't no. No.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, any day in the water with your friends is a win. You know, when you got the crew together. Some people. I mean, for me, I prefer surfing with people and my friends. Some people really like to have it be this sort of solo mission where that's their outlet. But for me, I want noise. I want a little ruckus. I want some hooting and hollering. So like when I'm with the crew, like I think that's when I thrive. Maybe shout out Jeff Meyer, my longtime surf buddy from New York forever. He might be my favorite person to surf with.
There we go. 2 more questions. Worst person to share a lineup with, and you're permitted to use a straw person just to describe them if you don't want to name names.
I don't know, like anyone that just paddles out to a wave they've never surfed before, paddles to the peak, like top of the lineup, just back paddles the shit out of everyone, every single wave, and just has no regard for others. Fair. And then falls on every wave and can't make the section from the peak, but continues to do it every wave.
They seem to be the repeat offenders every time. Yeah. There's always that repeat offender. Yeah. I mean, I think just like the anybody that's just not out there respecting the people around them. Yeah. You know, surfing's a really special thing, and I think sometimes we take it a little too seriously. And if we just go back to the roots of having fun and making sure that the people around you are having fun, I think it's a win for everybody. So to the guys or the gals that are just grumpy out there, you know, I'm kind of over that.
Yeah.
Good answers. Last one for you both. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by...
Ooh, I mean, constantly finding passion and purpose in everyday life. I don't know.
That's a great answer. Good one, buddy.
Wow, Mackenzie, jeez, that was like a good one. Yeah, I think like in like a same kind of corny way, it feels good to be able to work and do things that are true to you. And I always try to do that like each step of the way. So just stay the course. Yeah.
Great. Well, Buddy Pendergast and Mackenzie Warner, thank you so much for coming on the lineup. Everyone, check out the new Ulex Regulator series of wetsuits. It is well worth your time. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. I think this has been really insightful for a lot of topics for us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dave, for having us on here. This has been super fun, and yeah, thanks to everyone for listening and about wetsuits.
Yeah, agreed. It's been a blast, and hopefully we learned some cool things and see you in the water.